Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah. Let's journey back to the start of it all. My life story has always been about my mom, Rebecca, and me. We've been an unbeatable team from my earliest memories. My father left us when I was very young, leaving behind only faint memories that blur at the edges. It was always just my mom and me, taking on the world together. Although we weren't wealthy, my mom went above and beyond to ensure we had everything we needed, a safe home and food on our table. We lived in a modest apartment in a peaceful neighborhood, and it was perfect in my eyes. Growing up without a father figure, my mom became my everything, my unwavering hero. After finishing high school, I chose to stay close to home for college, attending the local community college. The thought of leaving my mom by herself was unbearable. She had sacrificed so much for me, and staying nearby was the least I could do. At that time, I was still figuring out my path in life, but I was content knowing that things would eventually fall into place. Life was simple, yet fulfilling for us. Eventually, I landed a job and worked my way up to managing a local retail store. It wasn't a glamorous job, but I loved books, and it felt like the right fit. My mom was ecstatic when I started contributing financially, easing some of the burden off her shoulders. Then Brian entered my life. We met when I was 21 in a serendipitous encounter at the retail store. I was absorbed in organizing a shelf when he came in looking for a book recommendation. We started chatting, and one thing led to another. Brian and I quickly realized there was a special spark between us, something truly magnetic, and everything just clicked into place. When it came time for me to meet his mother, Amy, I was understandably nervous. Brian had shared so many stories about her, and I wanted to make a good impression. Brian organized a dinner at Amy's place. Wanting to charm her, I decided to bring along an artisanal pie. Amy greeted us warmly. "Oh, Sarah, it's so wonderful to meet you. And you brought pie, how delightful." "Thanks, Amy. I hope you'll like it. My mom says I have a knack for baking," I replied, hoping to win her over. "Mom, Sarah's pies are legendary. You're in for a treat," Brian added, bolstering my nerves with his support. With a chuckle, Amy responded, "Well, let's see if it tastes as good as it looks." That evening was the beginning of another beautiful chapter in my life, one filled with new connections and continuing the story of me and my mom, now with Brian and Amy woven into our tale. Meeting Brian's family had been on my mind for quite some time. "Sarah, since we're on the topic of family, how's yours doing? I've heard it's just you and your mom, Rebecca. No dad around, right? That must be tough," Amy inquired during one of our conversations. My response was calm and genuine. My mom and I share a very special bond. We've always supported each other through thick and thin. The conversation took a turn when Amy probed further about my mom's marital status and insinuated that perhaps my mom was to blame for my dad's absence. This took me by surprise, but I tried to maintain my composure. "Amy, my mom is an amazing person. We've managed just fine on our own," I replied, trying to steer the conversation on a more positive note. However, Amy shared her candid opinion that single mothers tend to raise daughters who are problematic and bossy. She even went as far as to comment on my appearance and compare me unfavorably to Brian's ex-girlfriend, suggesting that I was a downgrade due to my job and education. Brian, taken aback by his mother's harsh words, defended our relationship, emphasizing that his feelings for me were based on who I am as a person, not my job or educational background. He stressed that our love and mutual respect were what truly mattered to him, despite his parents' hopes for him to marry someone with a different social standing. The dinner ended on an awkward note, and Brian apologized profusely for his mother's behavior. I reassured him that our relationship was strong enough to withstand external judgments. We both knew that our love was genuine and that we didn't need anyone else's approval to validate our bond. As our relationship continued to grow, Brian and I discussed our future together. His proposal came not long after, and we started planning our wedding with enthusiasm. When it came to the guest list, we chose to include Amy alongside a few of Brian's close friends, although Brian's father had passed away, leaving his side of the guest list smaller. We were determined to have an intimate celebration with those who mattered most to us. We shared our engagement news with Amy, and despite sensing her lack of enthusiasm, we didn't let it dampen our spirits. Inviting her to our wedding was important to us, as she was still Brian's mother. Our love and commitment to each other were unwavering, and we looked forward to our future together with optimism and joy, ready to face whatever challenges might come our way with unity and strength. Wanting Amy to feel included in our joyous occasion, Brian and I decided to personally visit her to extend our wedding invitation. With hopeful hearts, we knocked on her door. "Hi, Amy. We came to talk to you about our wedding," I started with a smile. "Oh, the wedding, huh?" Amy responded, less enthusiastically than we had hoped. "Mom, it means a lot to us to have you there," Brian chimed in, his voice filled with sincerity. "It's a really special day for us, and we want you to share in that joy." Despite our efforts to convey how much her presence would mean, Amy seemed uninterested. "Well, isn't that sweet? But honestly, I've got other things to do," she remarked dismissively. Trying not to let her response dishearten us, I said, "Amy, despite our differences, this day is about celebrating love, and it would mean the world to us to have you there." Her hesitation was palpable. "I'm just not sure it's a good idea," she finally said. When the wedding day arrived without Amy, it was a tough pill to swallow. Despite numerous attempts to convince her, she chose not to attend. Brian's friends and family filled the venue, yet the void left by his mother's absence was unmistakable. Brian did his best to remain cheerful, but the sadness in his eyes betrayed his true feelings. It's hard to see your partner so disheartened, and there was little I could do to ease his pain. We moved forward with the ceremony, determined not to let the situation overshadow our happiness. Brian, with admirable strength, insisted we focus on the joy of our union rather than dwell on who was missing. However, as the months passed, Amy's estrangement continued, casting a shadow over our newlywed bliss. Her deliberate distance affected Brian, though he never pointed fingers at me. When Brian's birthday came around, we hoped to mend fences with a small family gathering. Unfortunately, our invitation to Amy was met with silence, further wounding Brian. My relationship with my mother had always been strong and supportive, a sharp contrast to the strain between Brian and Amy. I couldn't help but feel guilty, wondering if I was the reason for their strained relationship. The bond between a mother and her child is sacred, and witnessing Brian's struggle with this rift was heartbreaking. It pained me to see him yearn for a connection that seemed increasingly out of reach, and deep down, I hoped we could find a way to bridge the gap and bring Amy back into our lives, for the sake of our family's unity and Brian's peace of mind. Feeling the weight of the rift between Brian and his mother, Amy, I couldn't shake the feeling that I might have unintentionally played a role in their estrangement. "Brian, I can't help feeling like I'm the reason your mom is keeping her distance. It's as if she's avoiding you because of our relationship," I expressed to him, my heart heavy. Brian, ever the reassuring presence, replied, "Sarah, you can't take the blame for my mom's choices. She's the one staying away, and while it hurts, her actions are on her. Despite how hard this is, you need to know it's not your fault. I love you just as much, and we're in this together. The most important thing is us, and I believe we can work through this." Driven by love and a deep-seated desire to mend their relationship, I decided to confront the issue head-on. Without informing Brian of my plan, I made my way to Amy's house, hoping a heart-to-heart conversation might bridge the gap between us. "Amy, it's been half a year since we've spoken. Don't you miss Brian?" He's felt the absence deeply, especially during significant moments like our wedding and his recent birthday. While you may have reservations about me, I'm asking you to reconsider for the sake of your son. My bond with my mother is incredibly important to me, and I see how much Brian values his relationship with you. Perhaps we could give each other a chance? Amy's response was cautious, reflecting years of expectations and disappointments. Sarah, you're not what I had envisioned for Brian. I have my doubts. However, I'm willing to entertain the idea if only because I miss my son more than I can bear. Returning from Amy's without any concrete assurances, I chose to keep our conversation a secret from Brian, hoping that a positive outcome might still emerge as a surprise. Then, unexpectedly, Amy reached out to Brian, offering a glimmer of hope. She proposed a dinner at her new home, indicating her willingness to start anew. It was a significant, albeit tentative, step towards healing and understanding, one that filled our hearts with cautious optimism. Feeling a spark of hope, I couldn't help but sense that things were finally starting to improve between Brian and his mom. Our visit to her place one evening seemed like a step in the right direction. As I assisted Amy with the dinner preparations, Brian relaxed with a beer, and a moment of truth unfolded. Son, I need to apologize for missing your wedding and birthday. It pains me to think about how I wasn't there for your big day, Amy expressed, breaking the ice with an overdue apology. Brian's response was heartfelt. Mom, it hurt that you weren't part of our wedding. It was a significant day for me, and I wish you could have been there. But hearing you say sorry means a lot. Amy then admitted her past hesitations about me, but acknowledged her willingness to embrace a fresh start. This conversation was a glimmer of hope for a more harmonious future. The topic then shifted to my mom, Rebecca, with Amy throwing in a not-so-subtle jab, hinting at a lonely life filled with cats. I couldn't let that slide, defending my mom's choice to live life on her terms. Brian chimed in, highlighting the warmth and acceptance Rebecca offered him, treating him as her own. The conversation revealed a bit of tension regarding the frequency of our visits to Rebecca compared to Amy, with Brian expressing disappointment over Amy's lack of response around our wedding time. Despite the rocky moments, Amy made an unexpected proposal for a new tradition, Sunday dinners at her place, suggesting a willingness to mend fences and create new positive memories together. This proposition lit up the room with a sense of optimism. The idea of starting new traditions signified a turning point in our relationship with Amy, showing her effort to reconnect and be part of our lives. Reflecting on the past year since Brian and I tied the knot, life has been wonderful. Brian's thoughtful gestures, like leaving breakfast with sweet notes before heading to work and surprising me with flowers every Friday, filled our daily lives with love and happiness. These small acts of kindness, along with our new tradition of Sunday dinners, were building bridges, slowly changing the dynamic with Amy. Though it was clear she hadn't entirely warmed up to me yet, her efforts to engage and be present were promising steps toward a more united family. Amy had her reservations about my mom, believing she was the root of some deep-seated issues. Despite these harsh judgments, I could sense her underlying desire to mend the strained relationship with Brian, which filled me with cautious optimism. Our visits to Amy had become a cherished part of our Sundays, slowly weaving a new thread in the fabric of our family life. These gatherings hinted at the possibility of building a stronger bond between us. Then, one ordinary Sunday, as we were preparing to visit Amy, an unexpected call turned our day upside down. My mom had suffered a stroke and was rushed to the hospital. The urgency of the situation meant canceling our plans with Amy, and Brian promptly informed her through a text. The thought of not being there for my mom in her time of need was unimaginable, so we hurried to the hospital, where anxiety and fear enveloped us as we awaited news. Thankfully, it was a mini-stroke, serious yet not as dire as we had feared. My mom was resilient, and her recovery began swiftly. I devoted the following days to caring for my mom, grateful for Brian's unwavering support. His visits were a comfort not just to my mom, but to me as well, reinforcing the strength of our bond. As my mom's condition stabilized, bringing relief and exhaustion in equal measure, our focus was solely on her well-being, putting other commitments on pause. Upon returning home one evening, physically and emotionally drained, Amy's unexpected visit caught us off guard. She expressed her frustration about our absence, seemingly overlooking the gravity of my mom's health crisis. "Amy, it was a critical time. My mom was hospitalized after a mini-stroke. We were terrified of losing her. Brian's support was indispensable, and it wasn't a matter of choosing one home over the other. We simply needed to be there for my mom," I explained, hoping to bridge the gap of understanding. Perhaps realizing the intensity of our situation, Amy shifted the conversation to a more immediate concern, her need to borrow our car due to her breaking down. Despite the tension, my response was immediate. "Yeah, of course, you can use my car tomorrow." It was a small gesture, but at that moment, it represented more than just a loan. It was an olive branch, extending beyond our recent disputes, hinting at the possibility of healing and mutual support within our evolving family dynamics. In a moment of need, Amy reached out, explaining she had an essential meeting to attend and needed transportation. Without hesitation, I offered her my car. With additional time off from the retail store and Brian having his vehicle, it seemed like a straightforward solution. "Of course, you can use my car. I won't be needing it for a while," I assured her, hoping to ease her stress. That evening, Brian mentioned the timely reminder Amy's car troubles had provided about his own vehicle's overdue maintenance. The next day unfolded with a plan in place. Brian and I decided that before heading to work, he would drop me off at my mom's house. We also agreed to lend my car to Amy, allowing her the freedom to return it at her convenience. Our itinerary included a stop at Amy's to hand over the keys, then a visit to my mom's, followed by dropping Brian's car at the maintenance center, and finally taking an Uber home. Our plan went off without a hitch. After a heartwarming visit with my mom, reminiscing and enjoying our favorite TV shows together, Brian and I returned home to find my car already back in the driveway, courtesy of Amy. However, the following day brought unforeseen distress. Receiving a call from the hospital, my initial fear was for my mom, but hearing Brian's name sent me into a panic. The hospital informed me of Brian's accident, and I hurried to his side, fearing the worst. Thankfully, despite the severity of the situation, Brian was safe, albeit with a few broken bones. He was unconscious, but the relief that his injuries weren't life-threatening was immense. I immediately reached out to Amy to inform her of her son's condition. Sitting beside Brian in the hospital room, waiting for him to awaken, I felt a mixture of emotions. The accident had been a shocking reminder of how quickly circumstances could change, but it also brought a sense of gratitude for Brian's relatively mild injuries and the support network we had, including Amy. In these moments of vulnerability and uncertainty, the importance of family and the bonds we strive to strengthen became all the clearer. In the tense moments of waiting for Brian to regain consciousness in the hospital, the atmosphere thickened with anxiety. It was in these quiet, fraught seconds, with Brian's hand in mine, that Amy burst into the room, her voice slicing through the air with accusations aimed directly at me. "Sarah, see what you've caused. This is your fault," she exclaimed, blaming me for Brian's accident. Confused and taken aback, I couldn't fathom how she could pin this on me. "Amy, how is this my doing? Brian was the one who decided to drive, not me," I countered, struggling to maintain my calm amidst her unjust blame. Amy's fury escalated, revealing deep-seated resentments. She accused me, my mother, of alienating Brian from her, lamenting missed opportunities for reconciliation, and then shockingly admitting to having tampered with my car, hoping to cause me harm, a plan that disastrously backfired, harming her son instead. Brian's sudden awakening and immediate demand for his mother's departure from the room marked a turning point. Amidst Amy's continued claims of trying to protect him from us, Brian made it clear her actions were unforgivable. Following the confrontation, it became apparent that legal steps were necessary to address Amy's dangerous actions. Her intention to harm, cloaked in a misguided sense of protection, resulted in severe consequences, not just for me, but tragically for Brian as well. The following weeks were a testament to resilience and recovery. As Brian's physical wounds began to mend, the emotional and psychological scars of the ordeal lingered, painting a complex picture of recovery that went beyond just physical healing. By his side, I navigated the spectrum of emotions, from anger and disbelief to a gradual, cautious hope for recovery. The incident opened a Pandora's box of legal battles, with Amy facing charges for her actions. The justice system's wheels turned, leading to her sentencing, an outcome that, while bringing a measure of legal closure, left us navigating a maelstrom of emotional aftermath. Throughout it all, the bond between Brian and me, tested under the most harrowing of circumstances, began to weave itself back together, stronger for the trials it had endured. The road to healing was long, marked by shared moments of vulnerability and strength, as we, alongside my mother Rebecca, stood together in the face of adversity, embarking on a path towards recovery and reconciliation, despite the shadows cast by past actions. While Brian was still recovering in the hospital, the weight of Amy's actions weighed heavily on my mind. I couldn't let it go without ensuring justice was served, so I reached out to a lawyer friend for advice. The process of filing police reports and navigating the legal system was complicated and time-consuming, but it felt necessary to ensure Amy faced the repercussions of her actions. Eventually, after several court hearings, Amy was sentenced to 3 years in prison for her attempt to harm me, marking a significant acknowledgement of the severity of her actions. Months have passed since the accident, and Brian's journey to recovery is ongoing. His physical injuries are healing slowly, but the emotional wounds left by his mother's betrayal are deep and raw. He's dealing with a lot of anger towards Amy, which is completely understandable given the circumstances. Through all these challenges, I've stayed by Brian's side, offering him support and comfort as best as I can. My mom, Rebecca, has been an incredible source of strength for both of us, helping us navigate this difficult time. We're all doing everything possible to create a supportive environment for Brian, helping him heal physically and emotionally. Despite Amy being behind bars for her actions, the idea of forgiving her seems almost impossible. The impact of what she did lingers, casting a long shadow over our attempts to move forward. As we continue to navigate this complex journey of healing, our focus remains on staying safe and supporting each other through the recovery process.